Alrighty, so to finish off the halfway point of the MLS season, because as much as I said this is match week number 17, this is also officially the halfway point of the MLS season, and we got 6 games to finish that off on Sunday, and unfortunately I will not be able to watch any of these 6 games because tomorrow I'm going to be working between 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., which means it's going to be right between where all of these games is going to take place, and I also will not be able to review any of these games until Monday at the earliest because this week they decided to put me into back-to-back 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. shift on Monday and Tuesday, and obviously I was not happy when they decided to announce that shift, but it is what it is. And I did say last month when I did start to finally working, as much as that's great, the fact that I'm start working and earning money, the bad news is that means sometime my work schedule is going to conflict in terms of when these games are taking place, and I guess this is pretty much real life problem that this is going to be something that I'm going to have to deal with the rest of my life, unless if there is going to be a time where this channel does grow enough where I can maybe do this for full time, I don't have to worry about that issue. But unfortunately, I still have to worry about that issue because this channel is still nowhere near as popular as a way where I'm going to maybe decide that in the future I might actually go full time if it gets to that point. But that's a discussion that we probably might have down the line, or maybe we'll never have that in the line if it doesn't get to reach that point. But either way, let us actually get into the first game on this 6 games that's going to be happening tomorrow to finish off the halfway point of the season. And we start off with the Chicago Fire taking on the New York Red Bulls, which will start at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 5:08 p.m. local time. I mentioned before in my part 1 of the preview, none of these games is going to be on national television, and don't ask me why that is the case. The MLS decided that this week we're just not going to have national televised game, and again, just don't ask me why that's the case. But in terms of this game, it's a game between 2 teams that are looking to get their first win in 5 games because both of these teams have been winless in terms of the last 5 games. In terms of injury report, as I mentioned in the last video, the injury report that I get is from the league website, and I have a feeling whoever is updating these injury report forgot that there is a midweek game that happened, because I see a lot of guys that are questionable on the injury report should not be on there because they play in the middle of the week, and I'll talk about those guys as we go along this video. But in terms of for the Fire, we definitely know Cromwell did not play this week alongside with Cassis Jr. and Navarro and Bobby Shuttleworth. For the Red Bulls, we definitely know that Aaron Long did not play. In fact, he's not going to be playing for the rest of the season because he's out with a torn ACL. Then you got Derrera, Harper, and then questionable for this game is Danny Royer and Andres Reyes. Now, again, coming into this one, because this is a game between 2 teams that are desperately trying to get a win, that they're definitely seeing this game as an opportunity to get a win, and we'll see whether or not if that is going to be the case. And I have a feeling whenever both these teams coming into this game is winless, it usually is a case where something's going to have to give, where one team is finally going to end their 5-game winless run, or if this game does end in a draw, then both teams will now go on a 6-game winless run, although they're still nowhere near in terms of the team that currently owns the longest active winless run in MLS, which that team is the Houston Dynamo. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is a game between a team that used to own one of the longest winless run in MLS, that is Inter Miami. In fact, they actually owned the longest losing streak in MLS at one point. But ever since that 6-game losing streak, Inter Miami has started to get themselves together. I mean, they are fresh off of a 0-0 draw against Orlando City in that Florida derby away, which definitely feels like 3 points if you're an Inter Miami fan, because, go to Orlando. Not a lot of teams are able to get points away from Orlando at Exploria Stadium that is not named the New York Red Bulls, so they will feel like that is an achievement. And actually, they did not drew 0-0 against Orlando City. It was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. I don't know why I wrote 0-0 draw in that one. But for Nashville SC, they also have been a team that, I mentioned before how this team, they don't lose. Like, they only lost one game, and unless you're not named the New York Red Bulls, nobody has beaten Nashville SC in this game. And ever since that only loss that they suffer against the Red Bulls, they have now gone unbeaten being in 9 games and once again start a very long unbeaten run. Now this game will start at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 6:08 p.m. local time. For Inter Miami, the players that out of this game are Frey, Jones, and their new signing Ventura Alvarado, which, by the way, if you sign a player and he's already on the injury list, that probably is not a smart investment. But who do I know? I mean, Inter Miami, they've been making some bad decision in terms of building their roster ever since they came in. So maybe this is just another list of some bad decision. Although I will say that Ventura Alvarado, I heard he's a very decent player. But it's kind of weird the fact that they decided to sign him and now he is on the IR list. But in terms of the questionable for this game, you got Ryan Shawcross and Robbie Robinson. Although Robbie Robinson should not be in the questionable list because I believe he did play in that midweek game against Orlando City. Now for Nashville SC, for players that is out, only player that is out is Walker Zimmerman. Although that is a huge absent because that's the captain of their team and probably the leader of that back line. But despite the fact that they don't have Walker Zimmerman, so far that Nashville back line, which I thought maybe could crumble a little bit because you know how much Zimmerman brings the leadership to that defense, it hasn't. I mean, this Nashville defense still look rock solid, and the only player that is going to be questionable in this game is going to be Alistair Johnston. But yeah, another thing that I forgot to mention about this game is that this is also known as the expansion derby. And the last time both of these teams met each other, believe it or not, Inter Miami was able to get a draw against Nashville SC on the road. Now, that might not sound that impressive because, Nashville this season, even though they've been winning some games at home, they also have dropped a lot of points on the at home. Hence, that's why they have like 10 draws alongside with pretty much every single road game that they play. Unless they're not playing against the New York Red Bulls, it's going to end in a draw, and this is also why I always said that they are the draw kings of MLS because nobody has even came close to having that many draw that they have, which is 10 draws so far this season. But that being said, since they still did win enough games, and also since they only have lost 1 game, they're right now they're the top part of the Eastern Conference, and they're gonna fancy this is a chance for them to finally get their first road win of the year against an Inter Miami team that they did finally get their first home win of the season against Montreal, but let's see whether or not if they can do it again, and especially it's definitely not going to be easy to try to face against a team that have rarely lost so far this year. Now moving on, in terms of the next match is going to be New England and the Philadelphia Union. Now a couple of weeks ago, I would say this is a matchup that I've been looking forward to for a long time. And in some way, it is still a matchup that I am looking forward to, although it kind of had lost a little bit of a luster because of the fact that, New England, they're still a great team, and they're still leading the Supporters' Shield standing despite they drew 0-0 to Nashville. But for the Union, yeah, it's been kind of a struggle lately. And if it wasn't for their much-needed 3-0 win against Toronto FC, they were on a stretch where they only won like 1 game out of their last 7 games. Now, that being said, they did finally end that kind of rough patch a little bit by winning 3-0 against TFC in a game where I really thought the Union were back at their best, and I'm hoping that is going to be the case coming into this game against New England because this could be a preview in terms of the playoffs, and we know both of these teams met each other in the playoffs last year, and that was the matchup where New England shockingly pulled off probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, upset in the playoffs last season by defeating the Supporters' Shield winner, the Philadelphia Union, in the first round, and eventually gone all the way into the conference final. But both of these teams can meet each other again, and as it stands, with New England being in first place and the Union being in 4th place, if both of these teams are able to get victories, then they would actually be meeting each other in the conference semi-final. But that being said, coming into this game with this one being starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff time is 6:08 p.m. local time. And also in terms of the injury report for both of these teams, only player out for New England is going to be Caicedo, with Josh Bell and Carlos Hill being questionable coming into this game, although I swear Carlos Hill actually played in that game against Nashville. Or actually, no, I don't think he did, but he's questionable coming into this game against the Union. But for Philly, we got Powell as the only player that is out for the Union, but questionable coming into this game is DeFries, Fontana, and Court Burke, who I believe he actually played in that last game the Union did against TFC. So again, Burke is a player that should be scratched off the questionable list because, again, whoever updated the injury report on the league website clearly forgot that there was a midweek game that happened this week. But yeah, this should be a matchup that, again, I still feel like a lot of people will keep an eye on it. And again, it could be a preview in terms of the playoffs. And, if both of these teams meet in the playoffs, again, like last year, I expect it's going to be another incredible matchup. And maybe if they do meet again this year in the playoffs, there could maybe be some rivalry that can develop between both of these teams. I mean, there's been times where I know rivalries in MLS nowadays, it's kind of unoriginal with some forced rivalry, and then there's also some that has been there for a very long time. But there also have been some that has becoming a rivalry because of the latest playoff matches and both teams being very good, and just feels like this is the case between New England and the Union, where there could be a rivalry that could develop between both of these teams if they face off again in the playoffs and continue to be decent in the Eastern Conference. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is none other than the San Jose Earthquakes versus LAFC, and as I said, because I'm working tomorrow, I will not be able to attend this game. But the good news is I will attend the next game between LAFC, or not LAFC, that's this game. It's between the San Jose Earthquakes and the Vancouver Whitecaps on Friday. And that game, by the way, I thought that one I wasn't able to attend because Friday is usually a day that I work, but this week they decided not to put me on Friday. Though that being said, on Saturday they did put me at an 8 a.m. shift, which, yeah, I'm not kind of happy about that, which means that, since that the next Quakes game is going to kick off a little bit later at 7:30 p.m. local time, I literally are just going to immediately exit the stadium when the final whistle is blown and rush back home so I can get home enough where I can get a good night's sleep before my next shift. But, talk about this game, I won't be able to attend this one. And it's also kind of a shame, the fact that I wasn't able to attend this one because, anytime when the Quakes play again LAFC, anytime when the Quakes play against an LA team, I'm obviously definitely up for it. And what's even more up for this game is the fact that this is the game where I'm assuming Jeremy Ebobisse will make his debut for the San Jose Earthquakes because, he didn't play in the game against the Timbers last week, so I'm assuming he should be fresh enough to be suited up for the Quakes in this game. And it's going to be so weird seeing him in a Quakes jersey, and it's still kind of surreal the fact that the Quakes got Jeremy Ebobisse. Like, I would have never guessed that would be a player I would think the Quakes would even think about signing in the beginning of the season. But now they have one of the most lethal goal scorer in the league. We'll see whether or not if he's going to do well. But that being said, the Quakes are still also going to be facing against a couple of lethal goal scorers on the LAFC side. That is Diego Rossi and Carlos Vela. And, for LAFC, they definitely want to forget about what happened in the last game. Yeah, the last game was an absolute disaster against Sporting KC. Probably the worst game that they had so far in their franchise history. Well, actually, it's right up there in terms of, I remember when they lost 5-0 against Atlanta United in the first or the second game of their season, and then also, the 3-1 loss against the Sounders in the Western Conference final. Might have something to say about the last game, but the last game was definitely bad in terms of the way that they just got absolutely blown out the door against SKC, even though I didn't think they played relatively bad in that one. Now, in terms of the injury report for both of these teams, for the Quakes, only player out for this game is Brazano, Kikinovic, and Akinic. Questionable for coming into this game is Eric Remedi. For LAFC, 2 players are out for this game. You got Opoku, and most importantly, Eddie Segura, who, yeah, they dearly miss Eddie Segura, and I really think he is a guy that has really organized this LAFC back line, and you can clearly see, without him in that back line can be very disjointed, and it was unsurprising how easy SKC basically pull apart that LAFC back line, especially with no Eddie Segura, and it seems like it's not going to be the case again. So hopefully that means that the Quakes should really go at this LAFC defense, and hey, maybe they can pretend it's a Galaxy defense, because I always talk about how the Galaxy have a bad defense, and the Quakes tends to do well and trying to pick apart a bad Galaxy defense. Well, this is another LA team, and even though it's LAFC, they're struggling to not give up goals. Maybe they can pick them apart. But that being said, it's easier said to be done when the Quakes have also been a team that has struggled to score goals. And I know even though they got Jeremy Boasine, and that hopefully could improve in terms of the goal scoring on this team and finally get a lead for number 9. How is the delivery and service is going to get to him is the question, because if the service and the delivery that we give to Boasine is going to be just as good as when Boasine got service from guys like Diego Valeri and Sebastian Blanco up in the Portland Timbers, I think Boasine is going to be that guy that's going to score 15 goals this season, even though he's nowhere close to that mark. But if that is not the case, then I do have some concern about his time with the Quakes, and he might not be scoring as much goals as he be, but we'll see how that's going. In either case, I'm still just kind of just surreal the fact that the Quakes actually got Jeremy Boasine, and the fact that I would have never guessed that would be the case, and this would be a good chance for him to give a first impression and maybe even score a goal on the debut against LAFC. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is none other than DC United versus Montreal. So for DC, not only they got that big 4-2 win against Columbus on the road in the last game, they're now officially back above the red line, as they're now in 6th place above the red line right now, and I think they have like a 2-point gap above the red line to a team that is just below the red line right now. That is Montreal at 6-5-6 record. Now, the good news for Montreal is that if they do get a win in this game, they would go above the red line, because the team that is currently still just above the red line is Columbus, but because Columbus lost to Atlanta this weekend, and if Montreal can beat DC in this game, they can leapfrog them into that 7th spot. Now, Montreal, of course, their last game, speaking of Atlanta, they drew 2-2 against Atlanta at home in the last game, in that wild and crazy game where we had an unusual circumstances where the game ended with just 10-9 kind of situation. But in terms of this game, in terms of the kickoff, it's going to be the latest kickoff if you actually count like the local time of the kickoff, as this will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 8:08 p.m. local time. Injury report for DC United. Well, despite the fact that they have pretty much almost everybody on the attack that is injured, which I think that's even more impressive of how they were able to score 4 goals against Columbus. Like, how in the world are they able to do that with guys like Edison Flores, Heinz Ike, Perez, Canals, Roberta, Hamid? All of them are out of the lineup, and I know some of them aren't really attacker, but still, how do they have so many of their best attacker on the IR, and they still are able to score 4 goals against Columbus? Like, that's just something that I definitely did not expect from this DC team. But that being said, you also got to give a lot of credit to Hernan Losada, where I really think he's working wonders for this DC team. Like, I know DC did get off to a rough start to the season, but I didn't really worry about this team being a team that could be bad, because I know Hernan Losada is eventually going to get the tactics right, and if he has the players to work in the system, which right now it seems like that's the case. I mean, he feels like he finally has got the players to buy into his system, and even though sometimes these players could be a little bit inconsistent in terms of the goal scoring, man, when they are able to hit in that system, and when the Losada ball, as they call it in DC, actually hit into full motion, this team is one of the funnest team to watch, and hopefully that's going to be the case again in this one, like what we saw in that game against Columbus. But again, it's not going to be easy, because Montreal is a team that they are one of those teams that they might not have a lot of flashy name in their team, but they're a very hard-working team, and a team that can really frustrate you and really make it hard to try to break down. So yeah, this is not going to be an easy task for DC, like they did against Columbus, where they just got completely pull apart the defense. But now moving on in terms of the next match. Oh, by the way, for Montreal, I forgot to talk about their injury report. So in terms of their injury report, they still do not have Clement Diop, their main goalkeeper, and also Tabala, Kyoto, and Lapinainen. So speaking of important attacker that Montreal are missing, They also have two of their most important attacker in Lapinainen and Kyoto not available. But the good news is, at least some of these attackers for Montreal is starting to step up. Guys like Georgi Mihailovic has really stepped up in terms of the goal scoring, because we know he's a creative player, but he's also kind of stepped up in terms of the goal score department too for this Montreal side. Now, moving on, in terms of the next match, or the last match, actually, before we have now officially hit the halfway point after this game is over, and also this one, because both of them kicking off at the same time, is the Galaxy versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. So the Galaxy, their record is 10-1-6, while the Whitecaps record is 3-6-7. This game, as I mentioned, will also kick off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, but the local kickoff time, since this is a West Coast game, is going to be 5:08 p.m. local time. The Galaxy, of course, won 1-0 against RSL at home, while Vancouver drew controversially 2-2 against Minnesota at home, and I don't really need to mention why they controversially drew 2-2, because you probably know it by now why exactly I say that. But in terms of the injury reports for the Galaxy, only player out is Ethan Zubak. Questionable are Chicharito and Vasquez. Now, the thing that they listed Chicharito questionable makes me believe that it's going to be soon, that we could see Chicharito back with this Galaxy team, and that has to be a huge relief for this team, knowing the fact that they truly miss a true number 9 in their team, and they're literally their main goal scorer for this team. And you know, hopefully once they do get Chicharito back, this team should be more dynamic going forward on the attacking end. While for the Vancouver Whitecaps, they do not have Dahome and Gutierrez coming into this game. Dahome, of course, he got injured after taking a penalty in the latter stage of that Minnesota game, which I will not discuss anymore about that penalty, because you probably heard many times of my opinions of whether or not that's a penalty or not. But when Dahome did score that penalty, he unfortunately got himself injured, and I'm pretty sure a lot of Whitecaps fans were definitely holding their breath and hope it's not like a torn ACL. But it seems like, from what I read in terms of the injury report, it's just a leg contusion, which means that, you know, I think he's going to be probably out for a week or two or something like that. Now, I'm no doctor, but I know players that maybe have suffered from knee contusion, they usually come back relatively quicker than, let's say, a torn ACL. That it looked like that was the case with what Dahome probably suffered. So again, it's good news for Whitecaps fans that their top goal scorer did not suffer a season-ending injury. And also, coming into this game, you know, I know a lot of people say the Galaxy should easily win, but this Whitecaps team, you know, they have a history to able to beat the Galaxy. And, you know, in some way, the Galaxy, if you want to talk about a bogey team and a team that they should always beat, and are a team that especially with the way that they're being much better and they're facing against a weak team, but they can't beat that weak team. I mean, I know that kind of doesn't make any sense, but what I'm trying to say is that the Vancouver Whitecaps has kind of like been a kryptonite for the Galaxy throughout these past couple of meetings. And yeah, I won't be surprised if the Whitecaps can pull off an upset against the Galaxy, and especially if the Galaxy don't have Chicharito. You know, we'll see. The Whitecaps might have a chance in this one, and that, you know, the Galaxy, they're not really flying like they were in the beginning of the season. And, you know, even though they did get that 1-0 win against RSL, they could have easily dropped points in that game if RSL was just being a little bit more clinical in that one. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the preview for all 6 of these games. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all 6 of these games. And as always, let me know in the comments below your prediction for all 6 of these games that's going to be happening tomorrow. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Do make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.